Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Frank Finnemore. I'm the Executive Director of the Cleveland and Woodley Park Village. And it's my pleasure today to introduce our presenter, Dan Solar from Pivot Physical Therapy. This is a series called Wellness Wednesdays that the DC villages, the 13 villages in the District of Columbia, collectively are putting on. So each week a different village sponsors, and this is Cleveland and Woodley Park Villages week to sponsor. So I'm very happy that Dan is here discussing mobility as we age. Just a quick introduction of Dan, who is the clinical director at Pivot Physical Therapy in Cleveland Park. He has a BS in kinesiology from the University of Maryland. He has a doctorate in physical therapy from Drexel University. He loves all things Philly, and he will talk about Philly forever. But after this presentation, he's also my personal physical therapist, helping me with some shoulder work. So I highly respect what he's doing and have some personal experience, unfortunately. But with that, I will turn it over to Dan and let him lead the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Frank. I'm going to just bear with me for a second. I'm going to share my screen here so everyone can see, and then we'll make sure that we're all set. All right. We're going to make it nice and big for everyone to see. All right. So what we are here to talk about today is exercise and mobility as we age. And being able to move kind of a little bit more appropriately overall. As Frank said, a little bit about me is I graduated with a doctorate in physical therapy from Drexel University in 2016. And I'm the clinic director here at Pivot Physical Therapy in Cleveland Park. I'm an orthopedic certified specialist, which means that I just really like taking boards exams. So I took another boards exam so that I can figure out how all these bones and joints work a little bit better. I'm also the head of our vestibular program and clinical excellence team here at Pivot Physical Therapy. So I work a lot with those who come in with dizziness or vertigo, balance issues. I do a lot with that, and I run our program over here. And I'm also certified to perform some functional proactive screening for aging adults. I do video analysis of runners here, as well as dry needling on site. So if anybody has any questions about those at the end, we can certainly talk a little bit more about that as well. So anyway, we're going to get on with the presentation here. Some of the objectives that I'm looking to accomplish with our presentation today, and I'm hoping to get through the material within 30 to 35 minutes or so, leaving some time for questions at the end, right before I get back to my treatments. So basically what I'm looking to get out of today is understanding the basic principles of movement and safety, at least as we see them mostly in the orthopedic world in the physical therapy clinic. We are going to review some norms for movement principles so you guys can do some self-assessment at home and figure out, am I actually physically well? We will also talk a little bit about exercise and mental health, which we are seeing quite a bit more prevalently as a source of some stress within people's lives during the pandemic, and some assistance with exercise principles. So I'm not going to go into super specific exercise regimes and whatnot. I try to promote independence, and this is kind of a learning experience for all of us to understand how to build on my knowledge of exercise, and when I want to be more active, how do I go about doing it and how to target it. So when we're talking about physical changes occurring with age, what are we looking at? We are looking at, oops, sorry, skipped ahead there. We're looking at, an increased risk for falls. We're looking at fatigue. We're looking at osteoporosis. We're looking at different systemic areas or systems within the body that start to show their age. Risk for falls does increase as we age, and about 1 out of every 5 falls causes a serious injury. And what we mean by a serious injury is it causes something that requires us to go seek medical attention. 2.8 million adults are treated in the ER every single year for a fall. And in 2015, medical costs were reaching up to $50 billion. So, cutting down on falls, one, obviously is going to save lives. It's very important and saves significant quality of life issues later on. Having a bad fall that leads to a serious injury can substantially affect how we live our lives and how we're able to live our lives afterwards. Fatigue, so difficulty with walking for social events or difficulty with tasks around the house. All of a sudden, I'm trying to put the dishes away and I'm bent over, huffing and puffing. That's a problem. Or I used to be able to walk to the store. Now I can't walk to the store without taking a break or two because it's just very tiring. We see that a lot in here. And osteoporosis in general, big problem, especially for women after the age of 45 to 50 is when we start to see some of these changes to come along. Women lose about 25 to 50% of their bone mass by age 85. And unfortunately, the most, what we call bone banking, is when we put some bone onto, when we're building our bone and how much bone mass we're going to have. That stops by somewhere around 18 to 25 years old. Okay, so there's, unfortunately, when we're 45, there's not much. I can't drink my milk, and that's going to make my bones more dense. We have to figure out ways to do that a little bit better. And you can talk to your doctor, you can talk to us as physical therapists. We do have some ways to manage and maintain our bone health. But we're not going to build more mass necessarily. So calcium is one of those things. Getting outside, getting your vitamin D, and making sure you're doing weight-bearing activity is the ways that we go about doing some of those things. So that's just some things to think about as we move forward. Some of the principles of movement, what we're going to talk on today is flexibility, strength, endurance, balance, and posture. Okay, when I'm going through my functional movement assessment, if I had it my way, every single person would come into the clinic once a year for a actual physical, instead of coming into your primary care physician for your physical where you tell them, yes, I exercise, and they check a box. We would do the physical component of the physical. Unfortunately, insurance doesn't always work that way, so we try to do some proactive screenings throughout the year for community members and those interested. We haven't really been able to do that as much during the pandemic, but we're definitely looking to get back to doing that as things start to get a little bit safer. But what the movement screening looks like is it talks about flexibility as it pertains to function, strength as it pertains to function, and so on and so forth, endurance, balance, and posture. So those are things that we're going to be looking at as we go through this presentation today. So the first place that we're going to look is flexibility and mobility, okay? And what do those actually mean? So can we move into the positions necessary to perform activities? When I'm talking flexibility, I'm talking your soft tissue. What do I mean by that? I mean your muscles, the spongy stuff all over you. Your biceps muscle, that's one that people can think about. That's a soft tissue. Your quadriceps muscle, your thigh, essentially, that's a soft tissue. Your mobility is how do your joints work? You can think about your joints as the hinges on a door. Are your joints greased up and oiled up and they move really well, or are they a little bit squeaky or rusty and they're a little bit tough to move? Both of those combined get you your full range of motion, okay? That's the difference between being able to reach up over your head and being able to reach to your shoulder height, okay? So upper body, we're gonna grossly look at shoulder, elbow, wrists, and fingers. Also looking at your neck and middle back. Your middle back and your shoulder are intimately related. If you have a very stiff mid back, your shoulder probably isn't going to move very well. And we see this a lot with desk workers. You sit on the computer for a long time, it stiffens your mid back up and it makes your shoulder not work super well. So those are things that we do see within the clinic all the time. From a lower body perspective, we see the hip, knee, ankle, and toes. Your toes do matter. They should be flexible and mobile. If your toes don't move, that's going to be a problem when you walk. Your low back is also going to be encompassed in there as well. No, you do not need to be able to do a split on a signpost like this lady over here, but if you can, kudos to you. Ankle range of motion and the back scratch tests are two good ways to mark your upper body flexibility, okay, and lower body flexibility. What you'll find within the presentation, a bit of a side note, is the orange highlighted underlined places are places that I've highlighted for risk for falls. So if you're taking notes, ankle range of motion, that's a place that we really want to look at for avoiding a fall, okay? The reason being is what the picture shows over to the right here, the crack in the sidewalk. Ooh, it's terrible because all of the sidewalks here in DC are super flat and have no cracks, correct? Or potholes, right? We're all good with that. Wrong. We see about my falls in the clinic when we trip outside. I see this being one of the biggest problems. Either a tree root or a crack in the sidewalk takes you down. You weren't paying attention, or you just catch your foot into something, and boom, you went from this highly functioning adult to someone who just fell on the street and broke their hip, and that causes a big problem moving forward. Okay, so we don't want that. When it comes to ankle range of motion, the reason it's so important is if you can't get your foot off the ground, well, you're not going to lift your ankle up over these obstacles, right? So one of the things that we look at is for 10 degrees of range of motion. What does that mean? It means that if you put your feet flat on the floor, okay, and your feet are flat on the floor, can I lift my toes off the ground? Okay. If it's really, really hard for you, that might be something that you look to address. Okay. If you're running into problems right away, that's an issue. Okay. You want to be able to lift those toes off the ground, lift your ankle off the ground. If you want to get really sciencey, you can break out your protractor from grade school and you can measure if it's 10 degrees or not. But if you think it's a little stiff, come and consult somebody or stretch your calves for a while. That's usually the best option. In my opinion, mostly anybody over the age of 50 should stretch their calves 3-4 times a week. Just make sure they're nice and tight, especially for you walkers out there that you found the pandemic to be really nice to get outside and do a little bit of walking even in the winter. Well, the calves are going to tighten up because you're working so much, they just tighten back up. So we want to make sure that we stretch them out and actually have the range of motion to do what we want to do. The back scratch test, this gentleman over here to the right is showing you, okay, for women, the middle fingers should be about 4 inches apart. And for men, the middle finger should be about 8 inches apart because we're apparently all less flexible. If you can touch your middle fingers together, great. If you can't really figure out what 4 or 8 inches is, try to look in a mirror or use your phone to videotape yourself do it and then take a look. What you want to think about this is, can I wash my back in every place that I need to? Or can I dress myself appropriately? Can I get back here? Can I get back here? Can I itch that itch right in the middle of the back? Right, usually the place right between your shoulder blades is the hardest part, okay? So if you're missing some flexibility here, where that's gonna end up showing up is what I just said, dressing, hygiene. I gotta reach for the seatbelt behind me for whatever reason, or you know, my kids or grandkids are messing around in the back seat. Stop that, I can't. And then all of a sudden my shoulder starts to hurt. Those are things that we deal with all the time. And don't worry, I'm not gonna, you know, send you up the river here without a paddle. I will talk a little bit about how we can do this, but I want you to start thinking about these are self-assessments. These are self-assessments for safety and function. And when we start to see a lot of these pile up, what ends up happening is now we're starting to lose my ability to function independently in my own home, which is not what we want to be doing, right? We want to be as independent as possible with the least limitations and the least amount of pain. So that's what we're looking to promote today. So we want to make you smarter about what you look at when you're moving around, okay? So that's ankle range of motion. That's your back scratch test. Moving on to stretching, okay? So like I was just mentioning, okay, evidence suggests that stretching for less than 30 seconds at a time is not enough to get our tissues any longer than they are right now. It might feel good, stretches in the 10-second range, 5-second range. Those are more to modify pain. So if my shoulder really hurts, I'm not going to stretch it for a ton of time because that's just going to put a lot of pressure on it. But what I could do is I could stretch it for 5 seconds and then come down. That's going to send some signals to my brain to shut off all my pain sensors, okay? And that's going to help modify my pain. But if I'm looking to increase my length, so like my ankle doesn't come off the ground, I'm going to want to hold my stretches for 30, 60 seconds, maybe even 2 minutes at a time, easing into it. I always give this silly putty example here. So if you've ever played with silly putty or something, or like a grilled cheese that has nice ooey gooey cheese, when you pull that grilled cheese apart or you pull the silly putty apart, you do it really slowly, it stretches over a long period of time. If you do it very quickly, it snaps. Your muscles aren't going to snap, but they won't stretch as readily if you do it really quickly. So stretching for a long period of time is going to get you more improvements than just stretching for 5 seconds. Okay. Overall, if you feel you're less flexible than you need to be to perform activities, that's when you're looking to stretch. So I get the question a lot. Well, you know, flexibility is great. I do yoga all the time. Well, if you're a non-flexible person and you're just moving through the poses, you're not going to get much more flexible with yoga. If you're holding those poses for long periods of time, you'll start to see some changes there. What you want to think about is, if I'm trying to gain length, I want to spend as long at that end range as possible. So my calf stretch here, my people out there that are sitting there can't get their toes off the ground. I'm going to say I'm going to stretch for a minute when I wake up in the morning. I'm going to stretch a minute after I finish breakfast. I'm going to stretch a minute at lunch. I'm going to stretch a minute in the middle of the afternoon, and maybe 1 or 2 times before I go to bed. That's going to get you that length. That's going to build up the time you're spending at end range. And that similar thing goes for like the back scratching test. You can do what this gentleman here on the right is doing, just starting to pull those hands together with the towel, or a strap, or a stretching strap if you have one as well. Let's go forward there. Okay, did I miss anything? No. Okay. Strength. Okay, so are my muscles strong enough to support my activities that I'm doing? Grip strength is something that we find to be associated heavily with independence in living. Okay. Rotator cuff strength and shoulder strength go hand in hand. Rotator cuff injuries or just wearing out of the rotator cuff starts to happen around the age of 45 to 50. And you start to have those, I can't reach up over my head, or when I reach up over my head, it doesn't look like this. It looks like I'm trying to bend my elbow a little bit to get up there. That might mean my shoulder complex isn't working super well. Physical therapists work with that all the time to try to get that shoulder to move a little bit better. Calf strength is also associated with fall risks because it's associated with being able to push off with your foot. And sit to stands is generally focused on independence of living and functional ability to do certain things. So from a grip strength perspective, we can all take a look at the chart over here to the right, wherever you fall. Of course, are you going to be able to measure this at home? Probably not, unless you have some really expensive equipment that you're not telling any of us about. I have some of that expensive equipment. We can test for these things, but if you're feeling like I can't open the heavy pickle jar, or the doorknobs are getting tough, or I'm starting to drop certain things, or it's just really hard to clench my fists, these are signs that your grip strength might be starting to fade a little bit. It doesn't, when we look at that, it can be a predictor of mortality, mostly because when your grip strength starts to fade, it means that you're starting to lose the independence in being able to live on your own, which causes cascades. So being able to maintain your grip strength, doing simple things just by using like a stress ball and squeezing it daily, doing 40, 50 a day, using rubber bands for each finger. It's bicep curls for your finger right there. You hold the rubber band over here and you just go like that. And you can do them on all the fingers like this. You can also go outwards as well, wrap the rubber band around and going out against it. It's not just the hands though. You've got to remember that your forearms matter. If everybody just has their hand really relaxed like this, and you go and move your hand up like this, you'll find that your fingers curl in. And when you relax and come down, they relax. And that's just based on how the tension is within your hand. When you come up, it feels like the hands kind of curl in like this. It's a lot easier to grip something when your wrist is up like that, because it puts the muscles in a better position to do that. So those are some tips and tricks that from a physical therapy aspect that we can help with, but maintaining grip strength, very, very important. Shoulder strength, again, expensive equipment to measure it. But again, do you have pain in the outside of your shoulder? Does it show up at night, but you change directions? Those are things that we see. Or again, if you rotate your hand back this way to reach back for those kids or grandkids in the back, or when you put your hands behind your back, is that starting to hurt? Those are signs that that rotator cuff might not be super healthy. Okay, and being able to strengthen that is really important in a safe manner. Some of the exercises here on the right, which is just a banded rotation like that, or taking a band and just pulling it apart and giving yourself a big wingspan. Those are some things that can help that rotator cuff get a little bit stronger. But when you're managing your exercise, you want to make sure that you're doing it pain-free. If you're trying exercises with resistance bands or weights and it causes pain, not muscle aches, pain, you got to stop. That's causing probably an injury rather than helping you at that point in time. Muscle burning, totally fine. Harmful pain is that sharp pain that you feel like you gave yourself a paper cut, or your stinging pain that's up in the shoulder. Those things, that would indicate something that you might want to seek a provider for. From a functional leg strength perspective, this one is definitely doable at home. Okay, what we do for this is a single leg heel raise test. Okay, what we're doing is we're standing on one leg and you're holding on like this gentleman over here to the right. They're holding on to a banister. You can hold on to your table, counter, whatever. You're standing on one leg and you're going to push up onto your toes as many times as you can. Okay, we're looking for normal is about 25 on each leg. I promise you your calves will be burning by the end of that. But if you can make it, excellent. If you can't, you work up to it. You do heel raises throughout the day, doing them with both legs or just with the single leg, up to you. And you can start to progress with that. I tell my patients when I'm giving this to them as an exercise, okay, you got 15 single leg heel raises on the right, you got 12 on the left. What you're going to do is you're going to do 50 double leg heel raises, so just pushing up and down on your toes, and then you're going to do 2 or 3 sets of 8 or 10 of the single leg ones with rest to build up that endurance and strength to get you to where you need to be. The sit to stand test is exactly what it sounds like. You sit down in a chair and then you stand up. You do this as quickly as you can in 30 seconds. Okay, you just do as many as you can within 30 seconds. The norms are over here to the right. So if you're 60 to 64 years of age and you're male, it's going to be somewhere between 17. Okay, somewhere around 17 that you should be doing in the 30 seconds. If you're 80 to 84, 13. It doesn't mean that you're a failure if you're below that, but what it does indicate is that you might have some functional strength or endurance impairments in your legs that you want to address, okay? The 5 times sit to stand, so that's going to be 5 times. You're going to stand up, sit down 5 times. If you can do that within 10 seconds, there's a giant study out there that shows that it increases your disability in the next 2 years if you're not able to do 5 sit to stands in 10 seconds. So wherever you are now, 2 years from now, most likely your function will have kind of crawled back a little bit. So when I see patients in here and they're doing 5 times up and down and they're doing it in 25 seconds, we have to have a conversation about, hey, we need to really start working on how your legs move, how your strength is used, how can you start to build this up a little bit so that right now, 2 years from now, you're still able to live on your own, get up the stairs, get out of a chair, get in and out of the tub. Those types of things are things that we talk about.
Dan, can we pause for just a minute and take a few questions?
Absolutely.
One question is, if you want to both stretch and strengthen your calves, does the sequence matter? Both calf heel raise exercise and stretching the calf?
Yeah, so a general rule is, if you've ever used a rubber band before and you think about pulling the rubber band apart and you hold it there for a while, the rubber band is going to be, it's elastic, it's going to stay out there for an extended period of time. It's not going to be as strong. So generally the rule is going to be probably do the strength training first then do the stretching. If you stretch beforehand, the muscles aren't going to be as able to perform the task that you want them to do. So that's, again, a little bit why, if you've ever watched a sport game in the last 5 years, the way they warm up now is a lot different. They don't stretch beforehand. It's a lot of dynamic movements. They stretch afterwards.
Great. And another question is, does the position that we sleep in affect our mobility?
Sort of. Yes and no. Sleep inherently is a non-mobile activity, so you're just going to be stiff when you wake up in the morning. You can sleep in better positions. Like if you sleep on your side, placing a pillow between your knees generally can help stabilize the spine a little bit. If you sleep on your back, I wouldn't have anything under your knees necessarily, because that could cause the hamstrings to get tight overnight. Sleeping on your stomach can often place direct pressure on the lower part of your spine, which can cause some pain. But you have to manage those things. We have to sleep. It's important to sleep in a comfortable position. The thing that I care about is that you are sleeping, and then we figure out how to make everything better afterwards.
Great. And one last question. The person writes in, I can imagine that an assessment of my flexibility and strength would reveal a number of areas to work on, if not all of them. Does that then result in a long-term plan to address each of those areas?
Correct. Yeah. So again, if you came into me and you showed me that you had no ankle flexibility, I would say, okay, well, go home. You're going to stretch for 10 minutes a day. You're going to come back to me in 4 weeks and you're going to be fine. But if you're showing me that your ankle is not flexible, you have weakness in your ankle, there's a balance issue, now we're starting to pile these things on. Now I don't think that you're going to be able to take care of this on your own. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to work with you for a while to get those things better. So, but all in all, my goal is to never have anybody in here forever. The goal is to get you out as quickly as possible and back to what you want to be doing. I don't want to see you for the long term. I want to see you get back to your independent functional goals.
Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Those are all the questions right now. And we are recording this, so we will be posting this to our website.
Sure. And my contact information will be at the end as well. So anybody can email me, if you have further questions as well. Okay, moving on. Balance, the evil balance in the fall. So the big one here is, can I stand on one leg for more than 5 seconds? If so, excellent. The question I usually get is one leg or both. I would generally say, as a rule, both. You need to be able to stand on your right leg for 5 seconds, your left leg for 5 seconds. Why? Because when you take your pants off or put your pants back on and you're standing on one leg and you miss for whatever reason and you're all tangled up, I don't want you falling there. I want you to be able to manage your balance. Okay. You take a misstep. What is your response? So from a self-assessment perspective, never do balance assessment away from a sturdy counter, okay? And preferably test your balance when someone else is home with you. If you don't have that option, maybe a friend or something like that, do not test your balance or practice balance on your own away from a phone in the middle of your room, because obviously inherently balance exercises and balance testing may result in a fall. Okay, so being safe and knowing what you can and can't do is important. Single leg balance is relatively easy to do at home. You can, like I said, do it next to a counter. Practicing for 1 minute a day has been shown to, I might be stealing my thunder from the next slide, but I'm not quite sure. Practicing for 1 minute a day on each leg has been shown to improve that over time. Tandem walking is heel to toe. Okay, so that's more dynamic. Generally doing this near a wall in your home or next to a counter again would be good. The timed up and go test is something we would look at in the clinic. And then vestibular function, that's your inner ear, something that we would look at in the clinic as well for those types of things. But from a home assessment, you can always try the standing on one leg or walking heel to toe at home. From an endurance perspective, the cardiovascular health is super, super important. If you're starting to feel fatigued with usual activities, if you're starting to feel like you can't make it to the grocery store, you have to ask for help to do certain things that you used to be able to do, it's a good indicator that your endurance is a little bit lower than it used to be. Okay. Places that we look is the 2-minute step test. This you can do at home. Taking your own vitals is extremely important, and being smart about how you do it, really great too. If you have one of those smart watches that measures your heart rate, those are mostly accurate, but I'm gonna just give 1 second here. I'm gonna demonstrate on my screen here. Here's how you take your pulse. You don't do it up here. Don't go up into your neck. Go over to your wrist. Here, take 2 fingers on the thumb side, and you just give a little firm pressure. You'll find your radial pulse, okay? And you'll be able to feel that, and you just measure it for 30 seconds. You count, okay, that's where I'm at, okay? Then you do the 2-minute step test, which I'll explain in a second, and then guess what? You take it again. Now you're knowing how your heart rate it moves up and down. If it shoots up to, if you're counting at 300, that's not super great. So making sure that your heart is at a good, healthy level. If you're taking notes, I will give yet another little tidbit here. If you want to target your exercise zone, here's a little equation. The basic equation is 220 minus your age. Okay, that's going to get you your estimated max heart rate. Okay, so if 220 and you have a 20-year-old, 220 minus 20, that's 200 is your max heart rate at 20 years old. Then you just multiply it by 0.65 and 0.85, okay? 0.65 will get you 65% of your max heart rate. 0.85 will get you 85% of your max heart rate, and that's gonna be a zone where you wanna target, okay? You wanna get your heart rate into that zone when you're walking, when you're exercising for your heart. That's gonna help you maintain or improve your cardiovascular health. The 2-minute step test itself is very simple. You just stand and you're gonna march for 2 minutes, okay? What you're seeing here on the right are the norms for that test. What that is for a 60-year-old male, they're doing 106 steps on average within 2 minutes. That's only counting one leg though. Okay, so it's not right, left, right, left, right, left. That's only the right side is doing 106 times, okay? So if you're looking to do a self-assessment and you're a 70-year-old female, you would do the 2 minute, you would measure your heart rate, you would march in place for 2 minutes, doing as many as you can, counting only the right side, and then you'd match it up to this number right here on the right, which is 89. Did I get 89 steps on the right side, or am I a little bit lower? Am I really, really fatigued? Could I not go on anymore? But I did hit it. Well, maybe I need a little more work there, or I'm not even close. I need a little bit more work on my endurance. Okay. Posture. The question that I get every week is, can you help me have good posture? And the answer is probably not. But the ability for us to understand what quote unquote good posture is and why some things might be restricted with posture is something that we can address and help. Your posture is going to be, your best posture really is going to be your next posture, okay? No body is good when you're static in place. Everybody works better when you're moving a little bit more. You sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, you're going to have mid-back stiffness. That's going to give you this gentleman here on the right who has this forward head and rounded upper shoulders. If this gentleman instead did the appropriate stretches and stood up and sat down, stood up, sat down throughout his day, that's the benefits of a standing desk. That's going to show you that you're going to start to get a little bit more mobility in the mid back and be able to stand up a little bit more straight. You're going to have better posture. Okay. So how does posture affect movement? It changes where our body weight is going to be located, and it changes the pressure on structures at our joints and bones. So what that means is it could throw your balance off a little bit. It can also place a little bit more pressure on certain things, causing things like osteoarthritis, sprains, and strains over long periods of time. That's where the pain comes from with postural issues. A place where we can self-assess for this is called the wall occiput distance test. So if you place your feet up against the wall and you place your butt up against the wall and you place your upper back up against the wall and you take your hand and you put it right there on the bone on the back of your head, okay? That is called the occiput. All you have to know it is the bone on the back of your head, okay? If it is more than 4 centimeters away from the wall, you're actually at risk for a stress fracture in your neck. That sounds really scary, but all that means is that the bones are getting pushed together like a sandwich, and they're just getting a little bit angry, a little bit inflamed, okay? 4 centimeters, give or take, is about 2 to 2.5 finger widths away from the wall. So being mindful on your posture there. So getting up against the wall and getting this back against the wall, pretty important, okay? The other one is the ribs to pelvis distance. So if you take your hands and you place them on your pelvis, okay, and then you take a deep breath and find your lowest rib, you take some fingers and kind of go between those two. If it's less than 2, we have a little bit of a posture problem down at the lower side as well. Again, increased risk for some fractures in the lower spine. So those are things that we want to look at. So this would be generally the stress fractures. I'll call them a stress reaction, occurs from prolonged periods sustained in that time. Just because when I sit at the computer or I watch TV, I sit in the forward head position all the time, doesn't mean that I'm going to get a stress fracture. But if you do have osteoporosis, if you sit in that position for long periods of time, that's where those things can come along, and that's where we want to obviously avoid. So how do I work on my posture? Lots of ways here, okay? So I'm going to show you here. You've got a couple exercises for the upper posture, a couple exercises for the lower portion of your posture. Before we get to this, I'm just going to come back to the last picture here because I want to point something out. In this area here on the right side, you see a picture. What a good way to understand where the tightness is if you go into that position, which part of your clothes are a little wrinkly and which part is really stretched out. If I'm in this forward shoulder position, the back here is really stretched out, whereas the front is really wrinkly. So that means this tissue is tight and short, okay, because I have a lot of other tissue here. Versus here on the back, it's very stretched out. Stretched out tissue or very short tissue doesn't work very well. So we want to go the opposite direction. So with upper torso and the forward head, rounded shoulders, we do a chin tuck, which you can see up there in the top right corner there. You can do shoulder blade pinching, which is just moving your shoulder blades back and forth. Okay. And you can also do a pec stretch where you go onto a door, which is what this woman here is doing. Okay, and you hold that for, like we said, 30 to 60 seconds at a time. From the lower torso and lower back, you're going to want to work on your pelvic tilts and even move those to planks to help engage your abdominal muscles. But you have to talk to your provider to make sure that those are safe for you to do. If you have osteoporosis, some exercises could be unsafe for you, and even osteopenia. So making sure that you know what is safe for you is very important. Glute squeezing and bridging can help engage your glutes a little bit more, and your glutes or your buttock muscles are going to help you stand up more erect. Okay. The hip flexor, which is in the front of your body, or quad stretching, will help loosen up some of the front leg muscles to take you out of the bad positions as well that we get in when we sit for long periods of time. So those are some ideas. And again, if you're not quite sure what those are, please email me afterwards and I'm happy to talk to you a little bit about them or refer you to some resources as necessary. That's a lot. So how do we schedule that? Okay. So you don't need to do everything. You need to do what's right for you. One of the biggest reasons why people fall off of exercise is because of scheduling or they don't have time for it. If you go to a physical therapist and the first thing that they throw out at you is, here are 27 exercises that you're going to start doing for the rest of your life. one, they're not a very good physical therapist. They haven't really thought anything through to what is going to be unique for you, and you don't have time for that. You have other things going on in your life. What you want to make sure of is that your activities are manageable and doable within the frame of your life. Okay. So if you show me that you have, wow, great flexibility in your ankle, well, then you don't need to stretch, okay, your ankle. It's fine. Move to something else. But you have very weak shoulders, okay, focus your energy on the shoulders, okay? Focus on strength training those muscles. When you look at stretching, we look for at least 2 days a week. If you're just looking for a maintenance program, okay, you could do that through yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi is a great one that's going to incorporate some balance into it as well. And similarly with balance, if you're going to really focus on your balance, because wow, you say I can't stand upright, then I need to at least be doing something twice a week for that. Okay. From a strength training perspective, at least 2 days a week per muscle group. Okay. So that means if you want to strengthen your shoulder, you need to be strengthening your shoulder twice a week. But you may also need to strengthen your legs. You're going to want to do that twice a week as well. So put it on your calendar. Monday is leg day. Tuesday is shoulder day. Wednesday is a rest. Thursday is leg day. Friday, shoulder day. Saturday, rest. And you get a rest on Sunday or something like that. Or Sunday could be cardio day. When you're looking at the cardiovascular schedule, we're shooting for somewhere between 100 and 150 minutes a week. If you can, try to target 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes every other day to get started and build it into a program of what you can do. This is a cookie cutter program on the left. This is not for you specifically. You have to figure out what works best for you and make decisions on where your weaknesses are and address them. I finally wanted to touch briefly here on just exercise and mental health and what exercise can do for you. The health benefits of regular exercise do include improved sleep, better functional endurance, stress relief, improvement in mood, increased energy level and stamina, reduced tiredness that can increase mental alertness, weight reduction, reduced cholesterol, improved cardio fitness, and assists in reducing anxiety, depression, and negative mood. Ultimately speaking, when it comes to mental health, a lot of the time, not only is exercise used as a coping mechanism, but when you're exercising, you feel better about your body is in a better position to deal with certain things, and it causes or it helps reduce the cyclical nature of some mental health disorders because of the fact that you're not having poor body image, because of the fact that you're not as stressed, because of the fact that your mood is improved, because you're sleeping a little bit better. Those are things that can obviously negatively impact your self-esteem and your ability to deal with certain stressors. So that's where exercise can come in and really help. There are plenty of studies that show that. And if you'd like some more information on that, or if you do need help with any of those things, we can provide providers for you. That's going to be it for me today. And this is my email here, and my phone number at the clinic is there, but the best way to contact me directly is through my email. I use it like a text message. I can get back to you as quickly as you can. Frank, I probably have time for like 2 or 3 questions as well, and then I'm probably going to have to run to my next patient. But if there's anybody who has questions or wants to chat, I'm here.
Yeah, we have just one question right now, and that is, if somebody wants to see you, do they need to get a referral or an order from their physician? Or how does that work?
It depends. It depends on insurance and what you choose to do. So with those with Medicare, it does require what we call a gatekeeper, which is usually the primary care physician writing a prescription. Sometimes they'll want you to come in. Sometimes they'll say, oh, you need physical therapy, here's the script, and whatnot. If you have other types of insurance, some do require a prescription, some don't. General rule is if you have a PPO, you do not require a prescription. You can come in with what we call direct access. We treat you for at a maximum 30 days. If you're getting better functionally, we continue. If you're not, we've probably already made that determination that you might not be appropriate for this setting, and we're referring you out for the proper assistance. So we do have quite a few years of medical screening in our learning. We screen all body systems to make sure that you are appropriate for physical therapy when you arrive here, whether you come from your doctor or not. And then we make the determination of if this is the right setting for you.
Great. Just two more questions, Dan. Do you know anything about Congress stopping Medicare paying for physical therapy?
Congress stopping Medicare from paying for physical therapy? Well, they're not going to stop Medicare from paying for physical therapy. Recently, they've talked about Medicare cuts, and it's been pushed on the voting right now. So as far as I'm aware, I'm not sure what the next thing is. It hasn't been an issue that's been brought up since I think around December or January at the moment in the House and the Senate, but I think there have been some extenuating circumstances on some of those things, and they have some more pressing issues. But yeah, they're not going to completely stop Medicare and physical therapy. It's more about the reimbursement that the physical therapists get. And yeah, I mean, when that comes up, we usually send emails out, and it's always nice when people write to their congressman, because from a physical therapy standpoint, we already take, and it's a fine line for us. So we really try to, do the best that we can, and we'll always see Medicare moving forward, but it is tough from a reimbursement standpoint. But yeah, if you want more information, the American Physical Therapy Association generally has the most up-to-date information, and they can be found at apt.org. They will have some outreach and things for Capitol Hill as well. They have resources on there, and they regularly update those with the most up-to-date information and any help that we're looking for.
Great. And last question is, can you give some examples of moderate versus vigorous intensity cardio exercises?
Sure. So that's where you get into those percentages that I talked about, right? So when you take 220 minus your age, okay, I'm a 20-year-old, 220 minus my age is 200. And then I take 0.85 and I multiply that, whatever that number is. I am not a mathematician, but that's the high end of my vigorous activity, okay? Moderate intensity exercise, that's going to be more in that 50 to 65% of my max heart rate range. And that should be what you're sustaining throughout the activity.
Great.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you can walk and get yourself to a vigorous activity. You just got to walk fast, maybe bring some weights, get your arms pumping, do some intervals where you're walking fast and slow. Or you can, go and do a high intensity interval class and get your heart rate up that way. So it varies for people. It's not the activity, it's how intense you do it.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Dan.
Absolutely. Do your exercises.
Just want to let everyone know that next week, April 7th, we will have Mount Pleasant Village to sponsor the next Wellness Wednesday, and that will be on caring for family caregivers, finding support in your village. And so that's an important topic for many of us that are caring for others. We encourage you to attend. There's also later throughout the month a session on fall prevention, nutrition as we age, and a cooking demonstration. So those are all coming up, and I encourage you to look at your local village for the list of the programs, which should include these Wellness Wednesday programs. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. It's been our pleasure to have Dan and Pivot here with us. And again, I will be posting this session on our website. That's www.cwpv.org, and that will be posted in the next few days as soon as it's available. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.